Good morning, everyone. My name is Lieutenant Frank Pekora. I am a float lieutenant assigned to the Coral Springs Parkland Fire Department. I was assigned to Rescue 71 that morning. I've been in the fire service for about 27 years now, with Coral Springs for 12 and a rescue lieutenant for 8. That morning, or that afternoon, we were training at the station when I heard the call go out, and Lieutenant Nada's unit was the first unit to be dispatched. And at the time, it was a possible shooting. I knew that I was going to be a closer unit by miles because his station was further away. So I immediately got on the radio and said I was going to break from training. My captain on the engine, I said, this seems like it's going to be an event. Let's get going to this. As we were driving there was a confirmed victim out on the fields. That now I found out that Sergeant Heinrich was the one with that victim, Kyle. As we got to the scene, we entered from the west and got pretty much stopped from going any further towards the scene because of traffic. There was a lot of buses, there were parent cars, as well as a lot of law enforcement vehicles up on the curb. Fortunately, we were at the corner of the property where the perimeter road between the two schools was. And when the report came in, the victim was on the field, I was in pretty much the only position to help. I remember we couldn't go any further. We were trying to back the truck up, but I exited the vehicle because my fire chief, Chief Babnick, had come up to the window and said, let's take a position on the other side of the vehicle for now until we get any more information, because I was directly exposed to the property. As I exited our rescue, a police officer came up to me and said, I have a victim. Let's go. I have a victim on the field. I need bolt cutters. Apparently, the victim was on another side of a fence that was locked, and fortunately, we do carry bolt cutters on our unit. So I opened the door. I asked my partner to exit the vehicle, grab our gear, and let's go. We started taking our gear down a sidewalk, and my immediate thoughts were, I got a fence on my left, a fence on my right. I'm pretty much pigeonholed, and I've got a lot of yardage in between me. Chief Babnick was in front of me. A police officer threw him a bulletproof vest, and I thought for a brief second, I said, wow, this is serious. Because the last thing I saw before I exited the vehicle across our computer was that a student was shot through a window and presumed dead. And that's when it kind of hit me that we're not playing around today. We're not training. This isn't a false call. About 40 or so yards in, my partner actually said to me, hey, Frank, is this really happening right now? And I said, absolutely, let's go. We didn't even think twice, and we just moved into the scene. By the time we got about maybe 100 yards or more to a field house is where we were directed. That's where we came in contact with Kyle. Apparently, people on scene helped him over the fence instead of having to cut through the lock at the time, so they got him to safety. And all I remember getting in that room was checking everyone's hands, watching everybody, making sure there were no weapons around us, and keeping everybody away from a window. Because there were people just here, there, and everywhere. Some were wearing vests, some I had no idea who it was, but I recognized Sergeant Heinrich from dealing with him in the past, so I knew there were familiar faces out there that were looking out for us. Talked to the victim. He was rehashing what he saw about the friends that he had seen and presumably lost. And the only thing I could think of, assess him for injuries, calm him down, and get him in my truck and get off the scene. So I remember turning to Chief Babbitt and saying, I need my truck. I got to get this kid out, and I don't want to take him across that long run that we just came from. So Chief had one of our fire marshals get in my truck, drive it over to us. When I made sure he had no immediate life threats, I saw his right sock was soaked with blood, and he was field dressed. So I knew at least at that point he was stable enough to get him out of that room and get him in the back of my truck, and we would treat him as we went to the trauma center. Just like Lieutenant said, we tried to refocus what he was thinking about, made sure he called his parents and let them know he was alive, and just trying to keep him calm, because that's one major part. When I removed the dressing, he had a major tissue loss, and he knew it, he saw it, and there was a calmness with him, so he understood what the situation was. But my partner and I, just constantly talking to him, keeping him calm, I think helped him get through that part of the day. Got him to the trauma center, got him to the doctors, and it didn't hit myself or my partner until we got back to the truck. We got back in the truck, we sat down, we just had a blank stare at each other, and that's when it said, what just happened? What did we do? Or what's going on? Because before we left the scene, the last thing I wanted to make sure is, were there any immediate victims around that area that we could also take to get out of that way, but he was the only one in that immediate area. And I know you've asked questions, and the only thing that I had immediately going through my head after that was I had to stay alive to get him to my family. I have a wife, a 3-year-old boy, and a 3-month-old boy, that all I wanted to do at the end of the day was just to go home and see them and give them a hug. So after our debriefing at the end of the night, the chiefs let me go home for a few minutes, and that made a difference to me, just being able to let them know. And my wife was watching it unfold on scene through the media, and when we were going down there, my phone was just, I could feel it texting, and I just picked up the phone just to let her know that we were alive, we were okay, and that helped her process it. But from that point, I haven't been able to watch the news, no offense to anyone here. It's been a little tough, and you can understand that we're all trying to get through this together, and we have great people to work with, and that's what's getting us through these moments. And to hear my partner knows my patient's mother, so to hear that he is alive, and he had a 6 or 7 or 8 hour surgery initially just to stabilize him, that was good to hear for me. That kind of helped me along. So that was my story.
Kind of what were you saying really about like the coping? You said it kind of in an aside when you kind of was up there, but about the dealing with traumatic experiences. You say you keep all of them with you.
I don't keep them with me. They're with me. I can't forget them. But I've learned a very long time ago that I have to separate these experiences from my life, or they are going to haunt me in the back of my mind. That I can't forget them. I can't put them aside and say they don't mean anything. But I have to remind myself it wasn't my children. On not just incident, any other incident involving death, shooting, children, we have to remind ourselves at the end of the day, we did the best we could. We helped who we could, and talk with each other.
You guys are so close to the scene. You guys are there before pretty much anybody else. What's that like rushing in, knowing that it's not secure yet, there's no police tape up? What's that feeling like? But knowing that these people need your help.
Oh, I think I mentioned I was the first unit on scene, first rescue unit on scene. The only immediate thing that went through my mind was go, get, and get away. That I knew in the back of my head the shooter was still there, and he was probably still active. By that last report of that child being shot through the window, I knew it wasn't secure. But I revert back to our training. I revert back to why we're here in this business in the first place. If we have a structure fire and there's a report of someone trapped in the building, we don't hesitate. We go and we try to save that life. And that's what my partner and I decided to do that day, was not hesitate. Once we got back in the truck, we realized that had we waited until that scene was safe, that there may have been a larger loss of life. And I wouldn't be able to live with that. I did what I did because that's what we're here to do. And I didn't think twice about it.